Lloyd, Javier, and Podong are still trying to fight the Jagatitan. Podong even manages to get Javier out of the way as the Jagatitan was about to obliterate him. At the same time, Lloyd realizes that they need to move to their Plan D. He then asks Javier to distract the dragon toward the coastline, and asks Podong to take him back to the Count. Meanwhile, the Count is disappointed that his plan of stopping the Jagatitan using the statue didn't work. Then he sees that Lloyd has returned safely. Lloyd quickly informs the Count about Javier fighting off the monster. Moreover, he tells them about his plan of using the statue and feeding the Jagatitan's obsession to distract him. Back at the battleground, Javier is on the verge of giving up. He tries his best, but realizes he can't handle this monstrous creature alone. Suddenly, Lloyd arrives with the statue restored. The Jagatitan reacts as expected, prompting Javier to make his way and use his Mana Blast. But he only manages to make a small hole in the dragon's outer shell. While Javier thinks he has failed, Lloyd assures Javier that he has done his part and reveals that it's his turn now. Javier feels exhausted after doing everything he can, but he can no longer participate in this fight as he has run out of mana. However, he has complete trust on Lloyd and his word and him dealing with this Jagatitan. Meanwhile, Lloyd realizes that he doesn't actually have a way of dealing with this monster, but he is still quite determined to save this city. Although there are not many ways, Lloyd starts thinking of what he can do. He realizes that he would require a triple heart circle to use his Mana Blast, but he finds out that he only has a double heart circle for now. He then decides to level up, but it doesn't take him to his goal. Just then, Lloyd receives some approval points from Javier, prompting him to unlock the triple heart circle. Not long after, Lloyd uses his Mana Blast and ends up successfully defeating this monstrous creature. Later, Javier opens his eyes only to find that everyone is safe. He then makes his way to Lloyd after following Podong and sees that Lloyd's heart has stopped beating. Arcos receives a letter from Count Cremo in which he informs him about his son, Lloyd's critical condition. Without wasting any time, Arcos leaves to see Lloyd along with Bayern. Just in time, Marbella sees them leaving and decides to tag along. Along their journey, they encounter a ferocious beast. Realizing that it will hold them back, Bayern asks the two to go around the beast and that he will deal with it. During that encounter, Bayern does manage to slay the beast but gets injured very seriously in the process. Just then, Marbella shifts their attention to a horde of beasts that are coming their way. Seeing that they hold no chance, Arcos loses all hope. Arriving as a beacon of hope, Javier appears out of nowhere, telling Arcos and the other two that he has come there to escort them. With no much efforts, Javier pretty easily takes care of the dangerous beasts. Seeing Javier deal with them so easily, Arcos recalls how he always knew Javier was stronger than him, but he doesn't remember him being this much strong while leaving for Cremo. Arcos wonders what could have causes this. Worried for his son's safety, Arcos asks Javier about Lloyd's condition, but Javier is unsure whether he will be safe or not. Javier then recalls checking Lloyd's pulse, which was present at that time. But at the same time, Lloyd wasn't breathing. After analyzing further, Javier realized that Lloyd had used triple mana circle, and although his heart had stopped, mana was the only thing keeping his body running. Later, Arcos and others finally arrive at Cremo. Along the way, Javier explains how Lloyd was the one to deal with the Jagatitan. Soon, the survivor passes by them and begins telling them how Lloyd saved his life. Not just his, almost the entire village owe their lives to Lloyd. Just outside Lloyd's treatment house, a man starts blaming Lloyd for causing all this unrest, but gets beat up by the public. Meanwhile, Lloyd wakes up only to find that he is going to receive a great deal of RP for gaining approval of so many people. He also discovers that Triple Heart Circle had prevented his death. Shortly after, Lloyd's parents walk in and hug them tightly after seeing their son alive and well. Back in the royal capital of Magenta, the Empress Alicia Termina Magentano receives a letter from Count Cremo, where he describes Lloyd's feat, but she decides to meet Lloyd herself and be the judge. The system informs Lloyd that he has received a staggering 1,500-point boost in his reputation. This was because of all the sacrifices Lloyd made to save this town. After accessing his skills information, Lloyd finds out that he now has a mana heart. He believes that he might be able to use Triple Heart Circle whenever he wants, but the system warns him that he has to protect his mana heart from the mana blasts as it might get him killed. Later, Lloyd meets with Count Cremo in his wagon. There they strike a deal of Lloyd repairing the town after all the damages it has suffered. At last, the Count agrees to pay thrice as much as the construction after Lloyd's negotiation skills. Getting out of the wagon, Lloyd makes his way to the stage. He then begins giving a sales pitch in front of the entire town, telling them about the benefits of his Ondol flooring. Seeing this, the Count realizes why he doesn't hate Lloyd. Not only that, Count Cremo believes that Lloyd is too valuable of a person to be kept away from this town. Lloyd thinks about Bayern and how he is just a below-average knight. One day, he makes his way to Bayern to get a report. Bayern then reports that he has dealt with everything, surprising Lloyd greatly. Just then, a construction worker arrives informing Lloyd about the construction work being done. Lloyd then goes to see the construction site and praises the workers for their impressive work. Lloyd even receives more RP for gaining people's approval. Slowly but surely their business has started booming. Sometime later, Lloyd is standing with Javier, thinking about how much profit he is going to make. Just then, the royal messenger arrives to inform Lloyd about his summoning at the royal capital. Later in the wagon, Lloyd decides that he is going to take full benefit of Magentano. At the royal capital, Magentano receives the two guests warmly. With just one look, she is able to tell that Javier has an immense amount of aura. Seeing this, Lloyd realizes that she won't be easily pleased, judging by her character. Magentano is impressed with Lloyd's commendable work back in Cremo, but she tells him that she will see it for herself if he is worthy enough. So she puts Lloyd to test, asking him what's the thing that requires some construction work in the royal capital. Lloyd knows what Magentano is wanting to hear, so he gives her an unexpected answer, telling her that the bridge needs some repair. To convince her further, Lloyd is aware of the fact that the bridge has fallen 12 times, so he promises to build a reliable one. In exchange for this, Lloyd offers his head if he is to fail. What's more is that Lloyd even makes Magentano sign a contract where, according to him, he is giving assurance to the Royal Highness that the bridge is not going to fall. After Lloyd's departure that night, Kyle tells Magentano how Lloyd seems like a really cunning and smart person, but Magentano has already analyzed that. Later, Lloyd receives some warm blankets from the Baroness to be given to her younger son, Julian. In the previous life, Julian dies in some street by a thief, but this time Lloyd plans to change things, so he sets his way to meet with Julian. Lloyd finally reaches his brother, Julian. There he tries to act as sane as he can to not let Julian feel suspicious of him. Obviously, he fails at it miserably, as Julian notices how Lloyd is not bullying him like he used to before. Just then, some classmates of Julian from the Royal Academy arrive and begin bullying him. Lloyd notices Julian's eyes and realizes that he doesn't want to be helped. Soon, the bully mentions that his father is Lacomina, prompting to spark a sudden reaction in Lloyd. He then gets up and Mana slaps him out of his misery. Seeing this arrogant behavior from Lloyd, the other mates get up from their seats and charge at Lloyd. However, they are nothing but mere toys in front of Lloyd, so he indeed treats them as toys and slaps them here and there. Losing some of his teeth, Diego Lacona loses his mind. He believes that he can easily take on Lloyd and Mana punch him, but after taking a look at Lloyd's mincing face, Diego realizes that he has messed up greatly. He quickly realizes that he shouldn't have thrown that punch. Lloyd smashes his head onto Diego's, letting him feel his wrath. He then keeps on smashing Diego's head onto the wall, telling him that he shouldn't bully his classmates like this. Julian even tries to get his brother off of Diego, but Julian very calmly tells his brother that he won't get bullied anymore if the bully doesn't live to see the next day. Just then, the royal guards arrive and reminds Lloyd that he is causing ruckus at the academy funded by the Royal Highness. Lloyd then immediately calms down, surprising Julian. He then introduces himself to the royal guards and tells them that he is trying to defend Her Highness's honor. Lloyd further explains that he is a royal guest and Diego indirectly insulted the Royal Highness. However, the dean realizes that guests are temporary and decides to make Julian pay when his brother leaves. Later, Lloyd proceeds to Julian to the headmaster's office, but Julian snaps, telling Lloyd that he shouldn't mess with his life anymore. Later, Javier assures Julian that he should put his trust in Lloyd, but he also explains how he suspects that someone might be disguised as Lloyd due to his unusual behavior. Javier further explains to Julian that he had tried to analyze whether there was another flow of mana in Lloyd's body, as that would indicate that there might be another soul in his body, but he didn't find anything. Hearing this, Lloyd takes a sigh of relief. He then enters the room and tells Julian that it is time for him to get to work. Lloyd then tells him how this construction work goes about. He explains him all the steps, including the most important ones. Before leaving, Lloyd tells Julian that he wants him as the construction worker because he is the only one reliable enough. Then Lloyd makes his way to Corgitis and shows him the blueprint that he wants to build. At first, Corgitis refuses, but after some convincing, he decides to take a look. Analyzing the blueprint, Corgitis realizes that one mistake will cause the bridge to snap, but Lloyd wants to make sure that it doesn't happen. Then a group of elders try to become an obstacle in Lloyd's work, trying to stop him from ripping the Royal Highness off of the royal treasury. They even make their way into the royal capital and proposes to Magentano to stop the fraudster, Lloyd.